Today, we are talking about design in healthcare. My name is Michelle Oldham, and I am joined by Adam Roatmill from AstraZeneca. Adam, how are you today?
I'm doing great. Thanks for having me.
Of course. So, tell me, what inspires you about design in the healthcare space?
I think one thing that's really interesting about it to me is that there's a lot of apps out there. And maybe they are helpful, maybe they're not. But in the medical space, it's regulated, which of course it should be. And so you have to really prove scientifically that it works. You have to prove that there's actually a positive benefit to the user, which for me as a UX designer, that's really like the gold standard.
Sure.
And it can be frustrating at times because sometimes if you're in a non-clinical setting, you kind of want to use scientific standards. You're saying like, let's do research, let's synthesize it, let's make a hypothesis, let's test it. But nothing could be better than working with doctors and scientists as essentially as your client, because they totally get it.
Sure, sure. So, talk to me a little bit more about that. How do you design for emotion, right? Or when we talk about the psychology of how you design for emotion and engagement in healthcare today, talk a little bit about that because I'm sure, obviously, from a healthcare perspective, you see a lot of that.
Yeah, I mean, take for example, there's a popular app, Headspace meditation app, which,
Sure.
I can't endorse it, but just as an individual, I like it. I think it's cool. Now, Headspace, if if it came across as like a form that you had to fill out, nobody would use it. If you came in and it felt like they just said, how relaxed are you? Are you stressed out? Yes or no? Nobody wants to fill out a form. But the key to the psychology of it is that making it personal,
Mhm.
making it engaging and inviting. You've got to make sure that the design of the product really plugs in to the rest of the user's actual life.
Sure.
So that way, if you're using a meditation app or whatever it may be, um, it doesn't really feel like you're not like checking out of your life and going to do some process. It's part of your life, and you're like, this is my favorite part of the day. I get to take 10 minutes and just do a little self check-in. And that positive feeling makes you want to keep using the app and keep building that healthy habit. It just becomes part of your life.
Sure, sure. So yes, of course, Headspace, Calm is a favorite.
Love that.
So yeah, absolutely, absolutely. So talk about the business impact a little bit. So what do you think about that? I mean, we talk about the emotion and psychology. What about the business impact, which is really important?
Yeah, I think one of the keys to being a successful and responsible product designer is that you've got to have something which is both desirable but also feasible and viable. And the viable means that it has to support a business, right? So you can't just go out and find out a bunch of users' wishes and wants with no attention to whether or not there's going to be like a successful business happening on the other end, unless you're doing, I don't know, a nonprofit with a huge endowment could maybe do it and not worry about viability. But for most of us, you want to have a positive user experience. You want to make sure it's based on what users want, even if they don't know that they want it. You do the research to find that out. But you've also got to work with business leaders and make sure that there's a connection between those two. And so, if you're a product designer, um, as long as the business is successful, that means that your product is working. If users are happy and the business is successful, which isn't always the case in some types of UX design where there isn't a business part of it, um, it can be hard to measure success. And I think that can be a real problem.
Sure, sure. Great point. So let's talk a little bit about diversity in the design space. What's your thinking around that? How do you incorporate diversity, in that space?
Yeah, I mean, I think we have a ways to go as an industry. I know that people are consciously making an effort. I'm part of something called UX Coffee Hours, which was established by some people from Google and other great companies. It's a volunteer thing that I do on in my spare time. I'm actually meeting with somebody in 15 minutes. And this is specifically for Black members of the UX community, either up and coming or students. We dedicated some time. Really, experienced designers are ready to volunteer and spend half an hour with someone, give a little coaching and feedback. And I think, stuff like that as a community, it's just something good that we can do that will help welcome more people into it. And then, many companies are having conversations about being more intentional, about saying, it does matter, and that you have to take steps to make sure that you're visible and that you're reaching, and that you're not putting out crazy, job descriptions that are asking for things that you don't even really need. Make it easy for people to apply. And then as far as the UX design, sometimes people will say, if you can't find anyone to do research and testing, just ask your friends, go on LinkedIn. And I get that. I understand the reasoning behind that. But the problem with that, what's called convenience sampling, is that you're likely to be friends with people who are somewhat like yourself. Now, maybe you're not. Maybe you have like a great diverse range of friends, in which case, good for you. You're evolved. But there are a lot of people who don't have that as much. And so if you're just researching with your friends, it runs the risk of having an echo chamber. So you want to make sure that in your research and your testing, that you're involving a diverse range of participants.
Sure, sure. Great points always, Adam. It's a pleasure to speak with you. Thank you so much for taking time. We really appreciate it.
My pleasure. See you around.
All right. See ya.